Welcome everybody to another episode of Point of Jew. I am said Jew, THEJHirsch, and on tonight's podcast, or this morning's because it's released in the morning, but I record at night, so wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey for all my Doctor Who fans out there, all my Whovians. Going to speak to a cosplayer, prop maker, and artist here in the Richmond, Virginia area, so that's going to be super fun. I am really looking forward for you guys to hear this conversation. We'll definitely be kind of getting into the intricacies of that as, you know, I go to a lot of cons, and so obviously there's tons of cosplayers there, but Devon makes a lot of really cool things. He specializes and kind of focuses on like armored type costumes and does a lot of weaponry, which is cool and interesting. So I'm definitely going to pick his brain and learn a little bit more about that. And we'll get into that in a minute and just kind of decompressing. Had the first podcast of 2021. Hope you guys enjoyed that with me talking to my buddy Gibson Vaught. I got to talk a little bit about football, which was exciting because I don't get to do too much on the sports front, even though I really enjoy that. I mean, obviously I love all of this because, you know, from filmmaking to music to comics to just sports to writing to all of this is just kind of encompassing my little world and my little point of view. That's why we get Point of View. But on another note, I like kind of just, you know, decompressing the week and everything. Hopefully your 2021 is starting out well. Hopefully you're not storming any government buildings, as that seems to be just a god-awful idea. But let's open up with what's been brewing. Last week, I talked a little bit about just kind of the shows that were inundating me over the little break between December and now, where I was kind of just binging Schitt's Creek and Cobra Kai. Just to think about and stuff we're looking into. Obviously, a huge comic book movie Marvel aficionado fan. And one of my favorite comic book characters of all time is Spider-Man. And I have had my problems with them, but I thoroughly enjoy the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I think Far From Home was a much better outing than Homecoming, and a lot of people probably disagree with that. Didn't really love Michael Keaton as much. I mean, I like Michael Keaton, but I really didn't think the Vulture character was very well developed, and I think the over-reliance on everybody being interconnected to Tony Stark, whilst I get it for the MCU, is not my cup of tea for those Spider-Man movies. I didn't mind it in the first one, and it sort of played out its welcome for Mysterio in the second one. But anywho, you know, during that break as well, read a ton of different rumors and things regarding on what we can expect for Spider-Man 3, and just kind of running down from the rumor mill. You know, we saw that Doctor Strange will play a role that's been confirmed by Marvel, that Benedict Cumberbatch will be in the movie. Don't know how big that role is. And then we got confirmation that Jamie Foxx will play maybe not the same Electro as in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but a iteration of Electro. And then there's been heavy rumors that Alfred Molina has signed on. He was Doc Ock in the original Spider-Man 2. Rumors that Andrew Garfield, who was in The Amazing Spider-Man as Spider-Man, and Tobey Maguire, our OG movieverse Spider-Man, will be back. And then little nuggets of, Kirsten Dunst, who is Mary Jane, might be in it, or, you know, might have Gwen Stacy show up, and just little smatterings from the universe is popping in, leading everybody to believe that there's going to be some kind of big multiverse event in Spider-Man 3. And I think that could be pretty cool. I hope, Marvel typically does things well. Sony does not have the track record of it, hence, you know, why they're making movies in conjunction with one another for our entertainment. But I'm intrigued. I do like the idea, and perhaps one of the other Spider-Mans. Now he just sounds like an old Jewish man. My name is Leonard Spitterman. No, that was a terrible accent. I don't recommend it. I can do it. You cannot. Specifically you. But anyway, I think one of them could, you know, maybe unmask, and obviously with a different face, kind of get Peter off the hook of the predicament he was in following Mysterio's death in Spider-Man Far From Home. So I like it. I think revisiting some of these characters would be really exciting to see. My one wish, I really freaking loved Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn. So out of anybody, let's get more Willem Dafoe in our lives. I think that to have Spider-Man and to not, I mean, Spider-Man has, maybe outside of Batman, Spider-Man has the best rogues gallery. I think that could be debated in perpetuity, but I really dig Spider-Man's rogues gallery, and the pinnacle of that rogues gallery for many people, he's actually not my favorite villain, but the pinnacle villain for Spider-Man is typically the Green Goblin. It's typically Norman. So I would be excited to see that. So that's my little bit of my nerd rant, what's brewing in my brain. And hopefully you enjoy these little, one-off whatever things that I think of or want to talk about or want to say. And, from there, let's jump into the interview. This is Point of Jew. Welcome, everybody, to Point of Jew. My guest today is a cosplayer, prop maker, an artist, Defiant Dreams Cosplay, Devon Macfal. Devon, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and speak with me.
Hey, absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
No worries. Especially, I see you rocking the Mandalorian insignia on your jacket.
Always.
And, being a cosplayer, so as someone myself who's been to 1,001 cons and interacted, but for those who maybe are not as dedicated to nerddom as myself or you, what does it entail being a cosplayer?
I think it depends on what part of it you're really into. Because I know some people, they only like, say, like the prop making or really just the making aspect and not really wearing the costumes. But I'd say as far as being a cosplayer and going to conventions and wearing the costumes and everything, one of the big commitments you have to kind of think about is like, if you just want to go and, just have fun with it, or if you're going and wearing, a specific character, how much you want to like invest into playing that character. So it's, for each person, it definitely means something different, but it's one of the things. Everybody has a different reason for getting into it or starting it. But I think in general, it's, at the end of the day, it's just something that's fun and enjoyable for the people that do get dedicated to it.
That's really cool. And for yourself, if I understand correctly, most of what you do, and somewhat to what we can see behind you a little bit, which is really nice, you do a lot of sort of armored cosplays, mostly video game inspired, and you do a lot of weaponry as well. Am I correct in that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd say that's, I've got other disciplines and things that I mess with as far as art and everything goes, but armor and weapons would probably be the big one, because I have very, 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 very little sew skill. So anything fabric based, I tend to cheat and fold the fabric over and run hot glue rather than sewing. Or I find jackets and things at thrift stores that I can modify. I don't tend to do a lot of fabric based anything.
And how'd you get into all of this? How did you get into making these armored cosplay pieces and crafting weaponry and things like that? How did you fall into that?
Yeah, that's something I've kind of thought about a lot and tried to narrow it down. And I think it kind of comes into two aspects of it. In a way, is a logical progression of the visual art medium for me, because I can't do any other discipline of art. I'm not can't sing, can't do music, can't do any of that. I've just always been a visual artist, whether it was, drawing, and then I got into sculpting and things like that. So to some degree, that whole creator God complex thing that we tend to get, it's like, oh yeah, I could draw this thing two-dimensional on paper and it's really cool. Then, oh, I can sculpt it, but it's made out of clay and I look at it wrong and it breaks. Right. And at some point that kind of shifts into like being able to hold something in your hands and have it real, start shifting into like when you see movies and games or anything that you want a prop or an armor piece from those different things. That's kind of where it's like, okay, I could draw a picture of it, I could sculpt it, but it'd be really cool to wear Master Chief armor or to have the Halo assault rifle. So there was that aspect of it being an evolution. And then there was also the fact of not that my family was poor or anything, but we just didn't have money to spend on frivolous stuff like
Yeah.
costume things. So it was one of those ones that, yeah, these things existed. There were people that made, airsoft conversion kits that looked like the Halo assault rifle or Star Wars guns and stuff like that. And they were multiple hundreds of dollars.
Wow.
So I started looking on YouTube and finding, you're talking in the earlier days of prop making when people were really starting to get into using the foam floor mats. I think Punished Props was like the main guy at that time, doing like the Commander Shepard and what's called the Mass Effect armor and everything. So looking at that and being like, man, it's $500 for these replicas that people have, or it's $12 for some floor mats that I can, start to work with. And I think that was kind of what got it, was just literally that desire to have these different really cool things, but not having the money to get them.
Was it sort of like, maybe alluding to it a little bit beforehand, was it like video games like Halo and stuff like Star Wars that kind of sparked some imagination into you doing this? Or was there any specific, whether it be gaming or movies or television, were there specific properties that kind of, fed into your like desire, like I really want X, Y, or Z?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, as with a lot of people, Star Wars was the big one that got me. And part of it that really, really kind of spoke to me is, like I said, I'm a visual artist. I draw and everything. So I've kind of always had like a attention to detail when it came to drawing the stuff. I'd, draw my action figures, draw whatever. So I would kind of notice those little things that were similar between, the outfits. So you'd kind of start picking up like, hey, the X-Wing helmet is actually the same helmet they use for the TIE fighter. They just painted it black and stuck it over top of a stormtrooper helmet and called it a different thing.
Yeah.
Like, you pick up on those different shapes. And as I got older and started to look at stuff, I realized, like, and then looking into the background information, that the Star Wars movies, they used so much just random junk, just anything and everything that they had. And it was kind of that thought process of like, oh, hey, like, it's not all just impossible to create things. It's, random things they cobbled together that look so good on camera, that it kind of got that thought process going of like, well, if they can do it, why can't I? Like, why can't I take some Nerf guns and PVC pipe and, flashlights and hot glue them together and make my own blaster? Like, it just kind of, Star Wars was always the one that intrigued me and really spoke to me as a kid. I saw basically the whole prequel trilogy in theaters growing up.
Yeah.
So having that kind of an understanding, or having that, I guess, in my psyche, and being so invested into that franchise, to then realize what they'd used to make the things was like actually within reach. It just, I guess it kind of set off a creative spark that was like, well, if it can be done, then why am I not doing this?
That's a good outlook. I'm sure there was tons of things that, I am not remotely creative in the fact of actually visualizing it and manufacturing something. But, every kid sees something, in on screen or in a comic book or through a game and would love to replicate it. Do you remember the first thing that you set out to make, and how did that go?
Actually, I do. And again, it's funny the way that things change over time. Because initially, I mean, you're talking, dude, I was probably like 7 or 8. For a Halloween costume, I wanted to be Boba Fett. And I had found, it was really bad. I'd found one of those like half face masks at, I think it was at Goodwill. Looked really goofy because it's a helmet and they made it like a little half face thing. So it's silly in that regard. But, I needed the rest of the stuff. I needed the armor and the gauntlets and all that. And we went to Michael's Arts and Crafts, and I found craft foam that was the correct colors. I found some green craft foam and some red craft foam, and I cut the green craft foam as close as I could approximate to Boba's chest plate, and then tried to put it on a t-shirt with Elmer's glue, and it did not stay whatsoever. Um, by the time it dried and I tried to put it on, it just cracked and fell off. And for the gauntlets, my ingenious method was to roll the craft foam into a cylinder and then use staples to close it. So as soon as I put it on, it sliced my arms up from the staples.
Ow.
And yeah, I pretty much ditched everything except for the Goodwill mask. So I think my Boba Fett costume was me with like, I think it was a Jango Fett mask and like a blue puffy jacket that I had in the closet because I had nothing else that was ready.
You were post Sarlacc pit, Boba, just kind of scraping by.
Yeah, just thrown together.
Very incognito. So you went from that, and then what was kind of your next major project after that? Like, when did you start to get a little bit more comfortable and understand how like the foam and everything worked, and what was kind of the evolution from there?
Yeah, so that was probably I was like probably about 8 when that kind of had happened. So I would have been honestly in high school actually, uh, probably about freshman year, because it was when Halo ODST had come out, and I don't know what it was, but the silenced ODST pistol with the little flashlight on the bottom of it and just all that I thought was just such a cool looking design. And I started looking at stuff that I had on hand because I'd heard about people using the foam, and at that time I didn't even know where to get foam. So I started thinking, it's like, well, I have cardboard. There's tons of cardboard. I have cardboard everywhere. So I went and it's kind of stupid. I realized that trying to make the ODST pistol would be hard because it was a larger piece. So it was like, I'll just make the classic, Halo Magnum pistol. And yeah, cardboard, hot glue, uh, all kinds of materials that should not have gone together. I used wood filler,
Oh, wow.
which actually worked really well. I've used this trick later on in life, which was funny because cardboard is a paper product and paper is a tree product. Uh, Wood glue and wood filler does work and react with cardboard, and it will solidify. And I still have the thing. It's basically a rock, but I still have it.
That makes a lot more sense. I mean, it makes sense. It just, I would not have thought of that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But that's really cool. And you've gone on and you've done just countless number of different pieces and things. And you do commission work as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what type of things are often requested, or what have you made recently, as part of that?
So most of the time, it's very recently I started doing any kind of armor. For the most part, I would only accept commissions for weapons because I was always concerned if I was to do any kind of armor or anything like that, that my worst fear was basically I'd spend all this time crafting armor for somebody that's, on the other side of the US or the other side of the world or whatever, send it to them and, it doesn't fit, it's too tight in one spot or whatever. And it being probably when I first was looking into commissions, I was like 16 or 17 when I'd started thinking about that. And again, I'm just like, that's the potential of like legal battle and like insurance and stuff like that, just way, way over my head.
Pretty heady for a
So
teenager, yeah.
yeah, and my thought process was like, well, weapons are pretty much a one size fits all, aside from, your M4 has a adjustable stock, but like most things are generally speaking, they don't change size if it's, a pistol or something like that. So most of the time that I did commissions, it was, in a lot of cases, it was just friends that, asked if I could make this thing from Halo or this thing from Star Wars or what have you. And it was only once I started going to conventions and actually selling my props, I'd have people look at the props and they're usually kind of surprised with the prices because I kind of have a different mindset with it, I guess, but I'm always making things because I like the challenge and learning from them. So when I finished making something, if it wasn't a commission, it was just me messing around, I don't have a real like financial attachment to it. So I wasn't, yeah, I'm not putting stuff out there at hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It's most of my pistols would be like 50 or 60 bucks, and big scale rifles and stuff like maybe 100, like prices that would sell pretty well. So seeing that, I think would kind of get people to ask like what my price would be if I were to, make something for them. So I've done my first major commission was for a guy in South Carolina. I made a rifle from Firefly, Vera, and that thing was it was a challenge, but it I like and dislike doing commissions, um, because since it is going for someone else, it's not just going to be hanging on my wall. There's kind of a pressure that like I want to do it as good as possible.
Of course.
So I kind of feel like I do some of my best work on commissions, but at the same time, I don't like doing commissions because it's a lot of stress.
Well, I bet to make it right. Um, Now you mentioned selling stuff at cons, but you've gone to cons too in costume, right? As well.
Yeah. Yeah. The selling at the conventions is a pretty new development. That only happened in 2018, actually. It was something I'd wanted to do for a long time. Just, I thought it would be cool. In one way, just to be able to clear out some of the excess that I had built up. Because I had literally I had a box that was just titled like test blasters, and it was just Nerf guns that I had painted different camouflage patterns. I didn't do anything else with them. I just wanted to practice, doing like woodland camo versus like the German, or I think it's Swiss, Flecktarn camo that's like red and orange and really odd looking. And I had no plans for them after that. I just painted them up and put them in a box because I just needed to test doing that paint.
Right. And who knew? And you got to make a little profit off it and clear out some space.
Yeah. So it was definitely, it was something I'd wanted to do for a while, but just, I didn't really know exactly how much a table or booth would cost. I guesstimated for most conventions I saw was around like 300, give or take. And for the most part, that was a bit more than I was able to do, but I could do the cost for a weekend to go and actually participate in the convention. I just didn't have a booth.
What convention was it that you were at?
So the very first one was in Savannah. It was Savannah Comic Con, and what was kind of really strange in a way, and maybe skipping ahead a little, but I I used to live in Virginia. I moved down to Georgia, and in Virginia, I was at Richmond Comic Con, and we'd done a little show related to the con called Viva La Cosplay. And one of the guys who was in charge or something to do with that convention, I want to say it was Mike Federale, he moved down here and started Savannah Comic Con because it's a really odd thing that there wasn't a whole lot of conventions and things in Savannah, but you have art school and all this nerd stuff like right there. So yeah, he had started it, and like that was kind of cool because it had that kind of stamp of like a quality stamp of approval, so to speak, because I knew that he did pretty good work. So that was the first one that I went to, or rather that I got to vend and sell stuff at. And I've only done two others after that. There was supposed to be a third one, but my day-to-day job scheduling got in the way of that one, so I haven't been able to do it, but I'm holding out, hoping in the future I'll still get to.
Yeah, it hasn't been much of the convention scene in the past yearish or so.
Yeah, there has been that, and that's kind of what makes the last one hit a little bit deeper, because this was before the whole Corona thing had happened, It was just, I had a work event that day that they told me we weren't going to have a work event and I would be clear that weekend. And then we weren't clear. And I had already bought a booth and everything for the convention. Uh, Convention runners were very cool about it. They basically told me, like, save the email, save this email, and in the future, the next time we do one, if you're able to come, we'll just carry the credit forward and you'll still have, a booth. And
That's nice.
that hasn't happened yet because of the whole Corona situation, but still was a very cool gesture because they absolutely didn't have to do that.
That was really nice of them. I also, well, not off topic, but I did not know you were out of Richmond. I know you from Richmond, so I thought you were still around, man.
Yeah, there was a decent little period where things kind of got super, super crazy. Because I did season 1 of Viva La Cosplay, and it was cool. It was kind of a weird duality because, like, the cosplay scene was, it was taking off. Like, we had that. There was a YouTube show, and then they picked it up and ran it like on the CW. Like,
I remember
that
that.
was, yeah, it was crazy that
You do
was,
that with the
happening.
Hodges, right?
Yep. Yeah, the
That's
White Tiger Films boys.
that's where I remember everything from. Okay, it's starting to make more sense now.
Yep.
So how long have
But
you been down in Georgia then?
um, about 4 years.
Oh,
Yeah, because I was gonna do season 2 of Viva La Cosplay, and the problem I kind of was running into is that while I was doing season 1, I was working at a restaurant, and I worked different positions in it, but I pretty much alternated between being a dishwasher or being a waiter. So decent money for what it was, but after a year, I kind of looked at it and was like, wow, I've spent a year here and gotten pretty much nothing out of it. Aside from the skill that I could go to another restaurant and say, hey, I can clean dishes and hand dishes to people. Like, didn't really have anything useful in that sense. And it was kind of daunting because I would have been 19 or 20 at that time. So trying to figure out what to do going forward and everything like that, I was really just had no real idea. And I kind of started thinking about maybe looking into military service because thought about it was like, well, uh, I'm in decent shape. I can run fast. I did, moderately well in school, so I should be able to do okay, like on the ASVAB and all that. And I was actually aiming for the Coast Guard, and that didn't happen at all. I tried and tried to get a thing, what do you call it, interview with Coast Guard recruiters, and basically they told me because I had a speeding ticket, they're like, nope, Coast Guard, everybody wants to be Coast Guard. You got to be squeaky clean. You got a speeding ticket. Don't come in.
I
Like,
feel like that's a very, very minor infraction to be
yeah.
disqualified from. It's not like you were speeding because you were trying to like run heroin from state lines or something.
Yeah. And the best is you might even know the area. It's a little past Richmond. I think it's Spotsylvania County.
I know Spotsylvania.
Yeah.
Is that where you got your ticket?
Yeah. It
Okay.
was some.
I have to briefly tell this story because it's Spotsylvania. Many, many
Perfect.
years ago, I flew in from Dulles, and my friend, who is currently my boss, actually, was picking me up from Dulles and driving me back to Richmond. I don't remember where it was I flew or what have you, or if he was even on that flight with me too. I don't remember because I moved out of Virginia for a little bit and lived in Ohio, and I was constantly coming all over the place and
Gotcha.
traveling. And Dulles sometimes would be a very cheap airport because of being a hub.
Hmm.
We were driving from Dulles back to Richmond, and in Spotsylvania, I don't think he was speeding very, very much at all, maybe like 5 over, if that. And we got pulled over, we got a ticket. The only notable thing that I'll always be ingratiated in my brain is we were listening to Blink 182 on the radio. And I think today he will not put Blink on in his car while driving for fear that the cops will pull him over. That is somehow tied in his psyche that
Oh,
Blink
that's
is
beautiful.
inexorably linked to that.
It's just gonna summon them.
What's my age again? Woo! I don't know.
Yeah, it was great because it was my first ticket, my first like real run in with the law, and I didn't really know what to do. And
Oh,
apparently, there's a spot coming off of the interstate where it just sort of transitions from interstate into highway and doesn't tell you. And I got pulled over, and the guy's like, "You know why I pulled you over?" I'm like, "I got no idea, to tell you the truth." He's like, "Well, what were you going?" I'm like, "Interstate 70. I was going 72. I should be good." It's like, "You're on the highway. Speed limit's 55." Like, oh. Yeah, I just admitted to him I was doing 72, so I had no protection in that regard.
no, no.
But yeah,
Oh,
just because of that, and honestly, in all reality, given now what I know with recruiters and stuff, he probably was just about to go to lunch and didn't want to deal with anybody and just fed me a line.
that's ridiculous, though. I'm sorry to hear that, man. But I'm assuming everything worked out fairly well.
Eventually, I tried to go Air Force because it's like, well, everybody wants to make fun of the Air Force for being like easier, calling them Chair Force or whatever. I'm like, hey, that sounds great. And man, those guys, maybe it was lunchtime again, I don't know, but I went to their office, heard them inside talking because it was this weird building, man. It's a recruiter building that you walk into, and like it's just a hallway, and the different doors are the different branches. And I heard them talking inside. I knocked on the door, and like I kid you not, they stopped talking and they turned the light out, like completely blacked out the office. I'm just standing outside the door, like, guys, I heard you. I know you're in there. And never got an interview with them either.
That's crazy. That's like pulling the thing when you're home on Sunday morning and you don't want to be bothered because there's a solicitor coming by. Just shut off the lights, close the windows. Maybe they won't see that we're here. I mean, that's
And you know, it's sort of cringy now thinking about it, but I definitely did. So I ended up going with the Army, not my first choice, but it was like I know I didn't want to do Marines or Navy. I didn't want to be on boats or any stuff like that. So it's like, Army could still be a thing. And when I took the ASVAB, I got, you know, decently high score and everything. So I emailed the Air Force people. It was like, hey, I've already done this. I got this score for the ASVAB. Like, are you guys sure you don't want me? Like, I could still do something with y'all. And they never replied.
well.
Yeah.
You tried. You gave it an honest effort at least.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of I've spent a couple little times abroad now because of that. Traveled over different parts of the U.S. now for training and stuff. But Georgia has been Fort Stewart has been where I've spent pretty much the rest of the time. Um, my initial training after basic, I was in Arizona for dude almost a year, which was ridiculous.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you really got to get a go around a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, man. I've had one of those careers where every single thing that's happened has been one of those like, oh, that's a once in a career crazy thing that happens. And I'm like, that's basically every other month something like that happens. Because yeah, I joined to be a drone mechanic, and that's already a pretty long training cycle. Depending on what you do, most of your training cycles can be 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month, something like that. For drone mechanic, that was a 4 month training cycle
Were you
because
making
they
the
teach
drones?
you.
Were you making the drones look like the Millennium Falcon or the Slave One?
I actually tried to get one to look like an X-wing. It had pretty close to the right shape, but yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it was really cool school because even though it was 4 months, most of it was not related to the drone. It was related to everything else. So it was like, you know, a month where we learned like the fundamentals of flight and how aircraft and things work. And then we learned electrical systems to understand how the machine works, and then you finally learn about the actual drone you're going to be working on. And I was supposed to work on Shadow, and Shadow is a fairly small one. They're about a 15-foot wingspan with a body about, I don't know, probably about the size of like a refrigerator ish. They're not massive, but I was supposed to be a Shadow maintainer. And once in a career thing happened, they decided that Shadow was not as much of a priority as Gray Eagle. So everybody who had done Shadow and hadn't gone to their duty stations was now going to stay and get trained on Gray Eagle, which was another 4 months.
Oh, so you just got to double down because they needed that Gray Eagle coverage.
Yeah, so that's what was wild is that literally my first year in the Army was just training because it was 2 months of basic, 4 months for Shadow, and then it took a couple of weeks for Gray Eagle to start, 4 months for Eagle, and then after Eagle, I had to wait for my security clearance to go through so I could leave. So it was a solid, literally a solid year of training.
Wow. That, well, at least you were well trained, right?
Yeah, and that's what's so weird with our job is like most people they get out of basic and they go through their advanced individual training AIT, and like I said, it's usually anywhere from like uh, sometimes like 6 to 8 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, usually weeks. It's rare aside from like medical field and stuff like that that you see ones that have months as their time. And ours again was only supposed to be 4 months and not 10. So most people show up to their unit and they're still like a just entered the Army private with nothing on them, and we're showing up to our units already a year in as private first class, waiting to get promoted and go on down the line to other things. It's just a really odd kind of niche area that again, everything else I've encountered in the Army has been weird because of that, because we are such a strange beast of a job. We didn't even become a actual job until 2015. It used to be like an additional skill identifier that you would go to the school, but you had your normal job that you did in the Army. You would get it as a additional skill identifier, and then you could do that job or you could do yours. It didn't become something you could actually join to do until 2015.
That's so crazy. So during that year, with everything that you encountered and did and had to go through, were you able to, do any of your crafting or do any of your design during that time? Was there any like downtime for you to do that, or did you fall out of it for a little bit while you had to, do that training and acquire that skill set?
So that was one of the things that was so crazy with it. Um, I actually, because I can transition between the two, so I do a lot of drawing still. During basic, I actually did quite a bit of drawing because I had my pocket notebook, and yeah, pretty much whenever there was any kind of downtime or anything like that, I would sit there and just doodle in my book. And I figured out to keep the drill sergeants from messing with me, I would make sure that I had drawn out some of the different weapon systems and things that we had. And I had one it was a 249 saw that was disassembled, and I sat there and drawn all the pieces. So drill sergeant saw me drawing in my book, and I flipped the page real quick before he walked over. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just reviewing the parts and trying to practice." He's like, "Oh, okay, carry on."
Sounds like you could do some like exploded view stuff for like engineering.
That's what was really odd about it. It's so weird how art, like in general, the arts I think kind of get brushed off as being not important or not useful or whatever. But then as soon as people know that you have artistic ability, they find uses for it that you never thought you would use. So that was in the second half of basic, I kind of caught a break because our drill sergeant became aware that I could draw and actually looked through my book, and I thought I was going to get completely screwed over by it. And he decided he wanted me to design the t-shirt for our platoon.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, usually they just use the same, same designs and stuff that have been going on for years. And he's like, nah, I want a specific one custom that you're going to draw and give to the company. And then they'll, fix it up and make it for the shirts. And that was kind of cool. I got a spare one of the shirts for free, but also like I got to see my design on there. And being, last name Macfal, I'm kind of in the middle. So, we were doing like platoon runs and stuff. I can look around and everybody's got the design that I made. Like that was a kind of cool feeling.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that felt really rewarding. You got to see the fruits of your labor, and it's adorning everybody. And I mean, that must have been a nice payoff to see.
Oh yeah. And then, during the 10 months of AIT, I did a lot of drawing and there wasn't much in the way of costume stuff. I did a little, very, very light costume work because we had like a Halloween type thing that they did, and it became like a platoon competition, and it was like whoever had like the most creepiest area because it was like for the families and stuff to come through and walk through. So that was kind of cool because I got to use some of my not not a ton of my costuming stuff, but I got to just paint like some of the stuff they had. So they had, basic like zombie costumes and just random stuff that I got to kind of touch them up and just make them look a little bit better. But yeah, it was definitely, once I got out and got to, actually be on a duty station and have like my own house and all that, it was really a weird moment of like, how do I get back into this? Like, how do I just, because also I'd never lived on my own. I was working, out of my parents' garage. So to now be in, I was married, so I have the apartment on post. So it's like, dude, I've never had to set up like my own workshop. I've never had to have my own tools. I was using dad's stuff.
Wow. I mean, that's quite the growing experience, but obviously you were able to set stuff up. Did you, when you were setting up Defiant Dreams, was that what you worked on directly after, or did it take some time to ramp up into that kind of enterprise and endeavor?
It definitely took some time. I went through a couple of different name changes with it because I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing or where I was going with it. At one point, I just, I wanted somewhere to be able to post my art and stuff like that because it felt kind of awkward to show people like my personal Facebook page or whatever when I wanted to show them my work. And it's like, oh yeah, here's some, stupid thing I said when I was like 16, but also here's my drawings. Like, I just wanted a separate page. And yeah, it started as my skills got, better and better from just repetition. And it feels weird. It still feels weird to kind of not to own up to it, but to say like that I've gotten skilled and everything from it. Um, because it's again, it was literally just repetition. I was, when I was back home, I was wanting to go to a different convention like every month, and I wanted to do a different outfit for that every month. So I was making so much and just had such a high like creative output that I learned, tried something different. I learned from every single thing that I made, and then kind of carried those lessons and things forward. So each one would get, a little bit better. That I probably literally only had that head start because, I was living with my parents and, I was paying them rent, but like I was working as a waiter. So I made decent money with that. And because I could keep a kind of crazy schedule, I had really, really high output because I just would get off work and just set out making stuff and then go to bed, go to work, make stuff, go to bed, go to work. So that, yeah, that kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of it. And it was only pushing on that, and even still, once I had, I'd set up the workshop and kind of made that choice that I was going to keep making things and keep pushing forward. That was kind of where I started getting those ideas of like, I need like to rebrand it or to change the name. Like, what do I want to do, going forwards with this? And I still hadn't really come up with anything specific. I just kind of wanted that idea of like, without saying Defiant, but that idea of like everything is going to come and like keep me from trying to do the stuff that I want to do, but I'm still going to keep trying to do it. And I didn't have a whole lot of time, again, with the way things work. I, showed up, got my whole thing set up, and I think I got to Fort Stewart in April of 2016. And in August, they told us that we would be deploying to Afghanistan in February. And it's like, huh. So that was, another little time abroad. That was a solid 9 months in Afghanistan that I had, no costuming or anything going on. So that was kind of what forged out like the Defiant Dreams idea, because that was literally the idea at that point. Is like, it's kind of just a dream because I'm in a legitimate war zone at this time. And that was where the defiance aspect of it came from. It's like, as long as everything goes good and I make it home, like I still want to do this. I still want to push forward with it. And that's actually, to bring it back around, the first convention that I vended at, Savannah Comic Con. That was the whole reason I was able to go to it. We had very limited internet access, but I did have internet at one of the USOs. And I saw like on Facebook that they were doing Savannah Comic Con. It was still a Kickstarter at that time. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll buy, advance tickets for it. But Kickstarter, the more money you put in, the more stuff you get.
Yeah.
And, we were getting, besides the fact that deployment money, your full paycheck is tax-free, we were also getting hazard pay and family separation pay. And I'm like, well, if I'm getting this extra money from being shot at, I might as well use it, because that's like specifically my money.
Right.
Like the family SEP is, for wife and stuff like that. But I'm like, that's specifically because people shot at me. So I was looking at Kickstarter and was like, dude, if I put in $200, that gets me a $400 corner booth. It was like 2 6-foot by 6-foot tables put together that regular life I would never have thought to, put that. Cause I'm like, that's a huge, huge gamble. Like $400 if I'm going to make that money back or not. But in this case, I was like, I may not wake up tomorrow. So if I don't see that money gone, like it's not a big deal. So I went ahead and bought it.
That's one heck of a way to look at it. Hey, I might get shot, or I could have a Comic-Con booth. Maybe it's worth getting shot at. Oh, well, obviously I'm happy you escaped in one piece.
Me too.
That's a heck of a journey. Wow. I don't think anyone would necessarily, put those two things together. I mean, you were literally facing death on a daily basis. And then, one of my dreams when I don't die can be realized by doing this. So at least it provided you, kind of a gateway into be able to having that booth and to being able to sell the fruits of, all your labor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it was definitely one of them things of like, you wanted anything and everything you could to kind of distract yourself, in those situations. So that was kind of something I started thinking about more, is because I was like, man, I do not want to be career military. Like there are people who are all about it. And I'm like, hey man, more power to you. But like sitting there going through all that stuff, that was kind of the afterthought things. Is like, man, I really don't want to do this again. Like, really don't want to deploy again, really don't want to do any of this, but like, what am I going to do after this? And like you said, with the facing death and everything, it kind of makes you, it does make you reevaluate stuff where it's like, okay, sure, I could get done with this and do like another mediocre job or whatever, but I'm like, man, if I pull through this, like, I want this to all be worth it. Like, I don't want to stare down Afghanistan to then go and work at, target. Like I want to actually do something that I care about.
Right.
And I still had my sketchbooks and stuff, so I still drew and did all that and kind of made my plans of what I was going to do in the future. But yeah, that was a weird. I guess because in a weird way, it's a non emotional. It's a very logical train of thought. Is to sit there and think about like literally business structure and just business progression and things like that. So that was kind of my Zen calming thing to use.
I'm glad it worked. I'm glad that you got to do it. I mean, you've obviously very talented at it. It's been something you've been dedicated to. Not to drastically change gears on this, but following your dream and doing what you've done, there's a lot of people, just because I talk to a lot of people who are involved in different facets of creation, whether it's writing or acting or screenplays or painting or music or anything. For somebody who is thinking about, sitting down, sketching out and actually making something, kind of like what you do you have any advice for getting into that for somebody else that, that might be a dream for, or for somebody else that, is thinking about considering getting into it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because as far as like, you mean as far as like trying to make a business or a living out of it, or just like getting into just making things in general?
Just getting into making things in general. They may end up, making a business out of it too, but just kind of getting into making things, in the way that you do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. 'Cause I know one of the biggest things is like you have, with your smartphone, you have the entire world at your fingertips. So I use YouTube for everything. Anytime I've had questions with stuff I was doing, I would try to YouTube it or Google it to figure it out. But one of the things is like people tend to get like completely stuck inside their head where they have one specific thing that they're trying to make, and they get lost as far as how to do it because it's like it's such a unique thing that like nobody's ever done. But then when you look at it, you can classify it as one of very many different things. So what I mean is typically people have like a specific anime costume or anime armor or something like that they'll say like, I want to make this, but I have like no idea where to start. And I look at it and it's like, okay, well, Gilgamesh's armor from whichever one of the Fate Stay Night or Fate Order or whatever Fate series. Uh, yeah, it's a really crazy looking armor, but at the end of the day, it is armor, and specifically, it's a form of a knight armor. So they'll get so lost about how crazy the shapes are and everything related to it, and look at it like, okay, you need to look into things of that category. You need to look into people that have done knight armor and those types of things to kind of get a good starting point. It won't be exact, but it's enough that you can tweak it and move forward. Same with the one that always seems to get people are patterns. I know that's the biggest one is people want to use like Pepakura, the programs that have the patterns made for you, or where you can scan it or whatever. And the whole idea of being able to prototype and make your own patterns is like, I wouldn't say it's like a lost art because obviously a lot of people do it, but it's something that's very daunting to people because they think like they need the artistic skill and everything to do it. And in reality, again, you look back to call it the old ways, especially with armor. All this stuff has been done for years and years. So, I mean, I've got books and manuals on like 16th century arms and armor construction and stuff about how the blacksmiths and all would actually make armor back in those days. And again, it's literally a sheet of parchment paper and you sketch out a shape and then you make sure the paper fits on the body part and then you move it over to steel. It's the same kind of methods that we use now for foam armor. And I mean, actually in a couple blacksmithing groups on Facebook for the same reason, for guys that make reproduction armor. And that's literally like, at the end of the day, you make a pattern or a template, and even if you're not able to sketch or do anything like that, you have rulers. You utilize the tools. I guess would be the really the end thing to say is like utilize the tools and the knowledge that's already out there, and don't get so caught up in it where you think like it's impossible. So even if somebody hasn't made that specific thing, somebody's probably made something close to it, and also probably something way more extravagant. Because I've seen some costumes and stuff people have done that are just incredible with the amount of things that go into them, whether it's the detail or just the amount of pieces and armor and everything that goes to them, that then you look at whatever it is that may be daunting and it's like, well, if they can do that, then there's definitely a way to figure out how to do this.
No, that's good advice. Hedge your bets, look at something that's similar and something that might be a little bit more difficult, and you'll be able to figure it out. I mean, YouTube, like you said, is a great resource to see how people are doing things. And I mean, like you said, smartphones, the entire basis of all our knowledge, anything and everything can be found.
Hmm. Well, it's like actually a funny example I can give you right now. For the most recent commission that I'm working on, super crazy, gigantic. I think it's sitting at 5.5 feet long.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a LARP axe, and the guy wanted a bear head at the handle of it, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to do the bear head. So I just Googled pictures of a bear like doing its snarly mouth face thing, and I kind of just sat there and tried to sketch it out and see what I could get, and that was where this guy came from. Just sketched him out. And also, on a side note, when it comes to template paper and stuff, people, again, they get all up in their heads about like, oh, I got to get like the most high quality whatever. I'm like, dude, I cut up cereal boxes and I save them, because like instead of throwing away the cardboard from them, like it's it's good quality cardboard. But I used that for it, and then I was sitting there like, man, how am I going to actually make this? And it just so happened I set it down on a yoga block, and it literally was almost the exact same size as the yoga block. Like it kind of blew my mind, and that's what I ended up using. Actually, let me grab them because they're like right there.
This is really cool. Thank you for sharing all this with us, man.
Of course.
So that's the best part of why I do this podcast also in a visual medium, because sometimes people have some cool stuff to show us.
Yeah. So I had 2 of these yoga blocks I'd picked up initially because you see the corners of it are kind of curved. My initial thought was cut a hole in it and jam a PVC pipe and you've got a decent, Thor's hammer. But I had it sitting on my table and literally had drawn this out and just laid it over top of it. It was like, that's almost the exact size. So when it came to making that thing, headphone, that's what I used, was one of those yoga blocks, and just carved the bear head out of that.
Wow. That is extremely cool to see. Anyone who is listening to this on like Podbean or iTunes or Google Play, go to the YouTube channel when this comes out and look at this, because it is freaking amazing. It's my
only thing that concerns me is like from dead on, he has a kind of he reads kind of like King Kong, not really like a bear. But it was as close as I could get. But
it's fairly intimidating regardless. I think the gentleman who commissioned it would be, I mean, that's massive. I mean, that's impressive work.
Yeah, this has been one of those projects that's like kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's been a really cool one to do, but I'm like, I will be so happy to be done with it, because it's the first project I've ever had where I did a second or a prototype version of it, because I just had no idea how I was going to do it. because I've never made, most of the time I make my costume weapons and stuff. I make them to look cool, but I don't make them really to hold up to anything.
Right.
And it has to be rated for a full contact LARP. And I'd never done one like that before. And I know how to make stuff sturdy. The problem with making something sturdy is typically that makes it hard. And if you're going to be, hitting people with it, then that isn't usually a good quality.
Not for LARPing anyway. Home defense perhaps, but not for LARPing.
Yeah. So that's like, that was the other issue too, is it's a 5 foot long. It literally has to be 5 foot. Anything less, and it doesn't fall under that LARP's classification for like a two-handed weapon or whatever. So like it had to be 5 foot. So like just trying to find a base that I could use for the handle that was 5 feet long and would hold up to heavy wear and tear was a challenge in and of itself.
That's just an incredible project. When you're done with that, are you going to go back to doing just more stuff that you just for yourself, or is there more commissions lined up where you already know the next thing that you got to bang out for somebody?
Nah, there are no other commissions at the moment. And one thing that's kind of like, it's weird because sometimes the clients will see like the stuff that I'm posting on the Facebook page and like, hey, you're supposed to be working on my project. Why are you working on that too? And I typically run do like 3 or 4 projects at any given time, because it takes so long with certain phases that there's a lot of downtime. Anytime I have to do any kind of a sealant or painting or anything like that, I don't want to mess with it and cause, the paint not to cure properly or anything of that nature. So in some cases, it's short time periods, a couple of hours, and then others, it can be way, way longer. To get this thing to work and stay together and be sturdy, besides, I gave it like 7 coats of Plasti Dip. It was insane. But prior to that, I used this really weird caulking. I think it's, what's this crap called? Yeah, Liquid Nails construction adhesive.
I did all the heavy duty toys, huh?
Yeah, so I literally use that to coat the entire thing so that, when it would dry, it would be really solid, but it still has the foam underneath. But it took like 72 hours for it to cure. And in that 72 hours, it's like, well, now what do I do?
So it presents opportunities to work on other people's stuff. That's pretty understandable.
Yeah. And it's also, I kind of learned actually super, super recently in 2019, I was formally diagnosed as having ADHD, which was like, I kind of had like a stereotypical view of it and was like, no, I'm not like the kid that just bounces up and down and like gets distracted easy. And then once I like learned a little bit more about it, it was like, oh yeah, that's dead on. And that was kind of one of the things about it is having multiple things to work on is really good because I can alternate between them based on what I'm interested in. Because I'm extremely, extremely influenceable. So been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which was like, oh, cool, now I want to do Viking stuff. So while I was working on the axe, I immediately started working on Viking stuff. And just kind of going back and forth between them, as each one was waiting to dry and then work on the other project.
That's cool that you got all that stuff to go into. I will ask, and then I'll wrap up. I got to ask one thing just for myself for noticing it. I see you made a Captain America shield in the back there.
Yes, sir. That's...
Was that just something that you sparked randomly, or was that something that how did making the shield come about?
So I kind of, this was actually the part of the costume I cheated the most on.
Ah,
Um, yeah, it was one of those things, right? Uh, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of famous for doing this now. Like, I will find things and say like, oh, I could probably do something with that, and I'll just go ahead and grab it, and then it'll sit for years and years and years, and I'll never do anything. And then that one project will come out of the blue that I decide to use it on. So I was at GameStop and they were getting rid of all their Destiny stuff. And they had these shields that were for the Destiny Titan. And they were like 60 or $70 originally. And they had them on clearance for like $10.
oh wow.
And I had like one of their GameStop discount things or whatever. So I put that on it. I ended up paying like $3 or $4, like real money. But yeah, because of that, I just spray painted either side of it complete silver, and then I went back and did the red, and then made the star. Well, the circle and the star that connects to it are actually just thin craft foam, which is just hot glued and slapped onto it. Because I was like, I gotta have the shield. I did everything else as my original design for the armor and everything, and then was like, man, I would like to make the shield, but the convention was closing in very rapidly. So kind of hit one of those points. I was like, I know that I could make this, but I really don't want to be up until 3 a.m. the night before the convention again.
That must be a very, very big drag because I mean, I just go to the. I've only cosplayed at a convention once or twice. Usually at no, twice because I've done different incarnations of the Doctor from Doctor Who.
Mhm.
But conventions when you're not cosplaying or wearing armor or having extra things with you is exhausting. So I can imagine doing something till 3 in the morning and then being at a convention all day. It's got to be killer.
Oh yeah, and I mean, to some degree, I think, and there's probably other people like in the community you'll have the same mindset on it that it's almost like a rite of passage, like unofficially kind of thing. I know there's been a running joke of like if you haven't gone to a convention with the car like smelling of spray paint because you had to finish it like the morning of, like you haven't done the conventions, and that's absolutely something that we've done. Um, my wife cosplays with me in certain ones, and when we were doing our Skyrim costumes, I did the Daedric armor, she did the Nightingale, and we were up, again, just like that, trying to finish it in time for the convention. And she had done her whole costume. She had plasti dipped it and done all the other painting, but she hadn't done any of the silver scroll work that goes on the Nightingale costume. And it was about an hour drive to the convention, and we popped into a CVS, and she grabbed like 3 packs of silver Sharpies because we didn't know how long they would last. And I mean, it was literally like I'm on the interstate and she's in the passenger seat with a silver Sharpie edging out all the details. And I'd tell her like, hey, I'm changing lanes. And she'd, pull the Sharpie back so she doesn't like hit it on a bump or anything. But that costume, dude, it reeked of Sharpie.
So that is doing it right. I can only hope and imagine. Hopefully, and within the next year, we'll be back at conventions, and you know, Georgia's not far from Richmond, so hopefully, I could see it one down there, or vice versa. Now that I know that you're not
Yeah.
here anymore, and the intro, I said you're a Richmond area cosplayer. I botched something. I'm usually
Ah,
well researched.
well, we're hoping to come back because I have 1 year left in the Army till my contract is up, and we're absolutely planning to come back to Virginia. Whether we're going to stay in the area or move somewhere from there, I don't know. But at the very least, for me to come back and like do the college and stuff like that, we're planning to come back to the area. So either way, I'm sure we'll run into each other somewhere somehow.
I think that's feasible. Devin, thank you so much for sharing your stories, sharing, your creations, going through creative processes. I mean, this was amazing. So I can't thank you enough for joining me on this. And the best way for people to check out what you make is Facebook, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have Instagram as well under the same name, Defiant Dreams Cosplay. But I definitely post more often on Facebook. I tend to just post like finished showpiece type things on Instagram. So it is a lot prettier, but I post like maybe once a week versus daily.
So, all right. So I will link both just so people can kind of consume you either way. And hopefully we'll be doing this again soon. Maybe one day we'll do this at a con live while you're actually like regaled in armor and with prop, or at one of your tables, selling your wares for hopefully much more commissions. There's so many things right now that, people are super into, whether it's maybe something from like The Mandalorian or something, that you should commission something from Devon. Keep him constantly making stuff.
Hopefully that it does help staying on task. And also to mention that, um, you might even know him, Jim Maurer in Richmond. I've done two pieces of the Mandalorian for him. I did the blaster and then the gigantic forked rifle thing, and had to figure out how I was going to ship that from Georgia to Virginia for him.
Oh wow, I did not expect somebody to. Well, I guess I should have. There's 2 seasons of it out, so Jim jumped on that. I don't know Jim, but I guarantee I've probably ran into or seen Jim.
Probably.
But Devon, thank you again. I'll link your Facebook and Instagram below, and hopefully see you soon, man.
Awesome. And again, thank you as well, because it's nice coming on. It's been a blast.
I appreciate it. Like I said, hopefully a live iteration. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. See ya. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Point of View. Devon Macfal was a just tremendous guest. I hope you enjoyed his stories and explanations of things as much as I did. I was genuinely like super enthralled, and probably could have kept Devon on this podcast for like another hour and a half, because I had like 101 other questions. He had some other cool stuff to show. So I'm going to get with Devon and actually have him do like a little virtual tour of his workshop, because like he showed me, like after we wrapped up the interview, like all these different walls and stuff. It's just mind blowing. Like Devon does some super, super cool stuff. I'm not just like saying that because he, came on the show or what have you, but like legitimately just mind blowing, and such detail and amazing things that Devon's able to create. So I was very happy to have him on. I'm glad that, he's super well spoken. His stories are incredibly engaging, that you obviously just heard. Hopefully, anybody who does conventions or, is trying to get into making anything, heed some of his advice, because I thought it was pretty good. And this is a man who literally was, not to oversell it, but like staring death in the face, and came back and just wanted to keep doing his passion, doing his dream, and just making phenomenal prop work stuff. So I genuinely do mean it when I say I really in the future hope to. I mean, there's a couple of different guests, where I've ran into these guys because we go to conventions and things like that, and they're so supportive of what I do. Obviously, I mean, I just talk on a video or little audio things on Podbean, and hope I'm engaging and entertaining. And these guys are super supportive of it and come on here. And yeah, we are here to highlight what they do. But, if it wasn't for them, who do I have to talk to? I don't have any reason or ability to just pull guests out of a hat. So like that convention community is extremely important to me. So, so genuinely do mean I hope to run into Devon and do kind of a live show at some point. Next week's guest, going back to the musical well. So we'll be talking to a musician next week, and just trying to get some other good quality guests for you guys. If there's anybody who wants to come on or any suggestions, certainly leave a comment on the YouTube channel, or tweet at me at THEJHirsch42. Always receptive to any kind of messages or anything. Definitely trying to get as best and good a variety as I can. I know I say that quite frequently on this, but definitely hope you guys enjoyed this week as much as I did. And Devon's definitely somebody I would welcome back in a heartbeat. So, hopefully you got a lot out of this. Go back and check out some previous guests. And then just check out all the content on facebook.com/pointofjew. Until next week, everybody, thanks for listening.